We were standing at the gate, minutes away from boarding. The terminal was loud, chaotic, families saying goodbye, kids running around, boarding calls echoing through the speakers. But everything felt muted to me, like I was underwater. My daughter was quiet, too quiet. She had barely spoken since we left the house that morning. I thought this trip might help. We'd had our share of tension lately, arguments over school, over her friends, over me being too much. I told myself she was just going through a phase, that every mother and teenage daughter hit this wall, that she just needed space. But something in her eyes had changed. She wasn't just distant, she was detached. As we waited in line to board, I leaned down to ask if she had her headphones. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked up at me, eyes sharp, colder than I'd ever seen, and whispered, "I'm leaving you behind." 5 words, just 5, and my heart shattered. I froze. For a moment, I didn't even understand what she meant. "Is this a joke?" I asked, trying to laugh, trying to not panic. But she wasn't smiling. She wasn't angry. She was calm, detached. Like this decision had already been made long ago and today was just logistics. "I'm going with Dad when we land," she added. "He said I could stay with him." That's when it clicked. All the little moments that hadn't made sense, the long texts she wouldn't let me see, the secretive smiles, the shift in how she treated me, all of it was leading here. To this, a planned escape, a betrayal sealed with a boarding pass. We hadn't even taken off yet, and I had already lost her. She turned her face away after that, put in her earbuds, like the conversation was over. I stood there, heart pounding, trying not to break down in front of everyone. Parents with toddlers, couples on vacation, business travelers with carry-ons, they all moved past us like nothing was happening. But for me, everything was collapsing. I had tried so hard. I fought for custody. I worked overtime to provide stability. I showed up at every school event. I packed every lunch. And somehow, none of it mattered. Not when he could offer her a life with fewer rules, more freedom, and none of the emotional weight that came with living with me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her how she could do this. But instead, I took a breath and stepped out of the boarding line. She didn't even look back. I walked to the large windows that overlooked the tarmac, watched the planes come and go, lights blinking against the gray sky. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was going to vomit. But then something strange happened. I stopped feeling sad and started feeling still. Not peaceful, not yet, but clear. If she wanted distance, I would give her space. If she wanted to make this choice, I wouldn't stop her. But I wouldn't be left behind. Not again. Not like this. I pulled out my phone and opened a travel app, typed in the name of a city I had only dreamed of moving to, one that felt like possibility and escape and reinvention all rolled into one. I'd looked at apartments there before, late at night when I couldn't sleep. Always thought, one day. But maybe one day was today. I found a one-way flight, booked it. Then I bought another ticket, one for her. Same flight, same day, one way. She didn't know it yet, but I wasn't going to fight to keep her near me anymore. I was going to show her where strength lives, in letting go, in starting fresh, in not begging to be chosen. Because I wasn't just her mother. I was a woman, and I deserved to stop waiting at gates for people who didn't want to walk beside me. I sat near the terminal window, staring blankly at the planes outside, blinking against the blur of runway lights and jet engines. The seat beside me was empty, hers. She had walked off after whispering those words that still echoed in my chest like a bruise. "I am leaving you behind." She didn't say it in anger. She didn't say it as a child pushing buttons. She said it calmly, intentionally, as a decision. And that broke something in me. I wasn't angry at first. I was hollow. And in that hollowness, my entire motherhood unfolded in memories. The nights I stayed up when she was sick, the field trips I took off work to attend, the birthdays I planned when I could barely pay bills. All of it seemed to dissolve with a single phrase, like everything I had given was somehow forgettable, disposable, like I was. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was confused. Maybe her father had promised something shiny. He always did. No curfews, no lectures, no emotional labor, just the promise of freedom without consequence. He was always good at that, being the escape while I was the structure. I was the one who taught her how to apologize. He taught her how to avoid discomfort. I taught her how to stand up for herself. He taught her how to disappear when things got hard. I was the one who stayed. Through court hearings, through years of rebuilding, through being told you're too strict, too emotional, too much. I stayed, and now I was being left. Again, but something in me shifted as I sat in that chair, staring at the gate we were supposed to walk through together. I felt it first as a silence, then as a strange, soft clarity. If she had chosen to leave me behind, I would not chase her, not this time. But I also wouldn't stay behind in the version of life she had just rejected me in. I wouldn't live the next decade trying to prove I was worth being followed. That moment at the gate didn't just sever us. It freed me. I pulled out my phone, opened the airline app, canceled my seat on our flight. The agent at the desk asked if I needed help. I smiled and said, "No, I've got it." And I did. For the first time in a long time, I did. I booked a new ticket one way, to a city I had only dreamed about living in. A place I used to tell friends about, before life became school pickups and parent-teacher meetings and managing bills while trying to hold it all together. It was a place where I imagined sunlit mornings and quiet evenings with books and wine and no one asking, "What's for dinner?" I had talked myself out of it for years, told myself it was selfish, impractical, not right for a mother. But maybe it was time to be a woman again too, not just a role. Then, with hands steadier than I expected, I booked a second ticket for her. Same flight, same destination, a gesture, not a request, not a plea, just a door. I didn't know if she'd use it. I didn't even know if she'd read it. But I wanted her to know, this time, if she wanted to find me, she'd have to come see me for who I truly was. Not the tired woman who poured herself into meals and routines and softened rules just to feel loved. The woman who was rebuilding, who had nothing left to prove but everything left to live. In the hotel that night, I didn't cry. I journaled. I wrote down everything I had given up. My body, my career, friendships, spontaneity, the ability to be selfish. And then I wrote down what I was taking back. My mornings, my laughter, my plans, my boundaries, my joy. It wasn't a revenge list. It was a recovery map. I turned off the lights and slept like I hadn't in years. When I woke up, the world hadn't changed, but I had. There were no texts from her, no apologies, no explanations. But for the first time, I didn't reach for my phone looking for validation. I reached for coffee, sunlight, and the confirmation email for my flight. I sat by the hotel window, watching people outside board airport shuttles. Some were couples arguing, some were families laughing, some were alone, calm, like I was now. And I realized this, too, was family. Being alone but whole, being silent but certain, being without her but not broken. I opened my email and forwarded her the ticket, with a note, "If you ever want to see who I really am, not just the mom who raised you, but the woman who survived herself, I'll be here." That was all. No pressure, no guilt, no timeline, just the truth. I packed my bag slowly. I played music I used to love, soulful, raw, a little messy, just like me. I left a small note for the housekeeping staff, along with a thank you. Then I took a car to the airport and walked toward a gate she'd never expected me to walk through. Alone, smiling, carrying only one suitcase and zero regret. I wasn't escaping her. I wasn't replacing her. I was releasing both of us. She thought she had the power to leave me behind. But what she didn't realize was that I had already decided to move forward. Not out of anger, out of necessity, out of love, for both of us. And as I sat in that final boarding area, watching my new gate number flash on the screen, I whispered to myself, not bitterly, but with quiet strength, "I'm not waiting at gates anymore. I build my own now." I landed in a city where no one knew my name. And for the first time in years, that felt like a gift. No history to explain. No eyes watching me for who I used to be. Just streets I hadn't walked, cafes I hadn't sat in, and sunsets I hadn't yet learned to anticipate. It wasn't freedom in the loud, celebratory sense. It was softer. A freedom that sat in the quiet moments, the kind where you sit down, exhale, and realize you're not waiting for anyone anymore. I rented a small apartment. It wasn't perfect. The walls needed paint. The windows squeaked when the wind picked up. But it had a little balcony where I could drink coffee in the mornings, and enough room for plants, books, and silence. And most of all, it was mine. No framed photos of a family straining to look functional. No shared closets. No leftovers someone else was expecting to eat. Just a place to breathe, to become. The first week, I didn't unpack everything. I moved slowly, intentionally. Each drawer filled with something chosen. Each day scheduled only by my own rhythm. I took walks in the late afternoon, learned the names of local stores, started greeting the woman who ran the bakery across the street. Her name was Elena, and she called me La Mujer Tranquila. I didn't tell her the truth behind that stillness. I didn't have to. Some days were easy. I'd wake up with clarity and focus. I'd journal, make breakfast, answer emails. Other days, not so much. I'd lie in bed until noon, rereading the last message I sent to my daughter, wondering if she hated me, wondering if she understood that what I did wasn't abandonment but the refusal to be abandoned again. Weeks passed, still no reply, and I kept living. I enrolled in a writing course at the local community center. The first time, I stood up to read something aloud. My voice shook, my hands trembled. I talked about motherhood, about identity, about the strange ache of loving someone who doesn't see you anymore. When I finished, no one clapped loudly, but no one looked away either. One woman came up to me after class and whispered, "I thought I was the only one." I wasn't. None of us are. I started freelancing again. Small projects, a blog post here, a grant proposal there. My bank account didn't grow fast, but for once, it was money I earned with my own name on the invoice. That mattered more than I expected. I kept my phone close, of course. Every ding made my chest tighten. Every unknown number made my heart flutter with false hope. I told myself I didn't care if she responded. But of course, I did. Not because I needed her approval, but because I wanted her to know that choosing myself didn't mean I had stopped loving her. And then, one night, it happened. A message. Simple. 3 words. "Where are you?" I stared at the screen for minutes. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just read it over and over again. Not "I miss you." Not "I'm sorry." Not even "I'm coming." Just, "Where are you?" I responded, "Safe, building something new." She didn't reply right away. A day passed. My heart dropped. It had expired a week ago, because sometimes the first step towards someone isn't a full sprint. It's a glance back, a toe turned slightly in your direction, a whisper instead of silence. I was sitting at my usual cafe, working through edits on a piece about grief when I looked up and saw her. At the corner of the street, standing with a backpack, eyes wide, uncertain, but unmistakable. My breath caught, just her sitting across from me, pulling off her coat, and saying, "This city smells like cinnamon and coffee." I smiled. We didn't talk about what happened right away. We didn't talk about the airport, or the whisper, or the ticket. We talked about the street musicians. I let her fill the space in her own time. That night, I gave her the couch and extra blankets. She curled up without a word, and in the middle of the night, I woke up to find her sitting on the balcony, staring at the sky. I joined her, wrapped in my robe, holding 2 mugs of tea. She took hers without looking at me, then finally asked, "Did you leave because of me?" She didn't respond at first, just stared ahead, then whispered, "Good. We didn't need more than that." The next few days were slow. We walked the city. She asked about my routines. I showed her the bakery. Elena gave her a cookie and smiled like she already knew. We visited bookstores. We shared meals. And slowly, she began to talk about how things hadn't been what she expected with her dad, how she felt like a guest in her own life, how she thought leaving me behind would feel like freedom, but instead felt like forgetting her reflection. She asked if she could stay for a bit, that you don't stay for me, you stay for you. We were rebuilding, not as mother and daughter only, but as women learning to see each other clearly, without guilt, without shame, without needing to carry the weight of who we used to be. One night, she read something I had written and said, "You're really good." I smiled and said, "So are you." There was a time I thought motherhood meant giving everything and becoming nothing. That to be a good mom, I had to disappear, shrink, sacrifice without limits. It meant fighting like hell to find myself again so she could one day do the same. And as I watched her write in my old journal, sitting on that same balcony where I drank my coffee every morning, I realized she hadn't come back to the old version of me.